First up tonight, it's been denounced by the White House as a criminal act. But this week's publication of sensitive US diplomatic cables has been publicly greeted with little international comment or outrage, even from nations with the most reason to be alarmed or from the world leaders who were subject to withering character assassinations. The exposure of confidential communications by Wikileaks may now mean foreign governments will be less candid when dealing with American officials, for fear their views will be aired in public. While the US government has launched an investigation, Wikileaks says it has thousands more documents ready to release. Thea De Chaos reports.
I think this is unprecedented. It's the biggest leak of classified documents anywhere in the world.
I think Wikileaks is the organisation that needs to answer questions.
This is good for democracy. This is good for the average man and woman in the street to know what is going on.
From Capitol Hill to the Kremlin, diplomatic shockwaves are being felt around the world after the release of just a few of the 250,000 confidential US diplomatic cables now in the possession of whistleblower website Wikileaks.
The material is going to be acutely embarrassing to the United States, quite damaging to its diplomacy, and in some instances could be quite dangerous to the sources who've provided the information. So all in all, it's a pretty serious event for the US.
Today, US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said the United States would aggressively pursue those responsible for the leak, describing the breach as an attack on both the United States and the international community.
The United States strongly condemns the illegal disclosure of classified information. It puts people's lives in danger, threatens our national security, and undermines our efforts to work with other countries to solve shared problems.
What worries me, though, is the motives behind the people who are leaking this material. Is there disaffection, for example, within the State Department? Is there disaffection within the American Armed Forces, of soldiers in Iraq, in Afghanistan? Who is doing this and why?
The United States has already announced stronger security measures to prevent further leaks.
They're going to have to look at restricting even further access to information. The need-to-know principle, which has always been used, will have to apply even more so.
But the damage caused may have longer-term implications on the ability of US officials to gather vital information.
It's going to impact on their policy. It's going to have an effect that a lot of people who have been talking to them will stop talking to them. So their sources will probably dry up in the short term. Whether that will be a longer-term issue remains to be seen.
Just a tiny fraction of the 250,000 documents have so far been made public by select newspapers around the world. Some of the cables argue that a new younger generation of Chinese leaders would be comfortable with a reunited Korea controlled by Seoul.
Diplomatic reporting is a mix of hard facts, evidence, gossip, something you picked up at the Foreign Correspondents Club, a rumour that's going around the diplomatic parties. It's all valuable information to report back to your bosses at home, but of course you can't count on it all. It's not all synthesised, analysed and stress-tested, if you like.
Australia is also bracing itself for future revelations, which may include information on persons who are a security threat.
Potentially it could be people who are of concern because of their engagement with organisations, because of training they've had, or because of some concerns as to what they might undertake.
The government has set up a task force to examine the leaks.
The task force's job that we have, the whole of government task force, is to look at that material that's potentially in the pipeline of this communication.
Perhaps one of the most serious revelations so far is that Saudi Arabia privately urged a US military attack on Iran to destroy its nuclear capability.
Now we have proof that, yes, they would like to see Israel take them out, or America take out the nuclear capacity in Natanz and Shiraz. But then they don't want to say that because they don't want to give the impression that they're supporting the Israelis in this.
That is extremely useful for the Iranians, for example. So I would say they would consider that to be a very high value document, and they would have paid good money to get that. through traditional espionage or whatever. So now they're being given to this gratis.
But some foreign policy analysts say this is nothing new.
A lot of the news that is breaking is things that we sort of knew anyway. We knew that Gulf states don't trust Iran. We knew that China doesn't like Google. A lot of the news stories that they're reporting, we really knew that stuff anyway.
What may not be so well known is the revelation that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton allegedly ordered officials to spy on UN diplomats, including Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon.
That is probably the one story that I've seen that reflects badly, I think, on the State Department.
The US also ordered the gathering of biometric information, credit card and frequent flyer details on UN Security Council representatives.
I think getting diplomats who are not intelligence operatives to be collecting biometric data and frequent flyer numbers and that sort of stuff is not advisable.
Perhaps the most entertaining diplomatic cables are those describing world leaders. Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin was described as an alpha dog. French President Nicolas Sarkozy has a thin-skinned authoritarian style. Italy's President Silvio Berlusconi was feckless and vain, whose frequent late nights and penchant for partying hard means he doesn't get enough rest.
I don't think this is going to do significant damage, though, to the United States, because everybody knows that Diplomatic Corps collects this kind of reporting and sends it back to their capital.
This Cold War bunker in Sweden, known as White Mountains, is one of Wikileaks' data storage facilities. But the website's Australian-born founder, Julian Assange, is now in hiding. Today, Ecuador offered him residency, but he's still wanted in Sweden on alleged sexual assault charges, and today Interpol issued an international red alert for his arrest.
And that places an obligation on those countries that are part of the Interpol arrangements to actually detain him when he arrives.
Julian Assange has justified the leak by accusing the US State Department of withholding information that should be in the public domain.
It's trying to make it as hard for us as possible to publish responsibly, in the hope that it can get us to not publish anything at all.
But not everyone is convinced by WikiLeaks' rhetoric.
If this is not a shield for anti-American behaviour, if they really believe that, then I would like to see their exposés of Chinese diplomatic and military dealings and Russian military and diplomatic dealings and Iranian and North Korean misdeeds.
Democracies, in a way, are more seriously affected than non-democracies because, by definition, Mr Assange is going to have a lot of difficulty getting comparable material from other non-democratic states. So it's not a level playing field. So who does it advantage? It doesn't advantage the democracies, in my view.